In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Come, Holy Ghost, Creator blessed, and in our hearts take up thy rest. Come with thy grace and heavenly aid to fill our hearts which thou hast made, to fill our hearts which thou hast made. Pater noster qui es in caeli, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostri. Amen.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
Sic erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Our Lady of Perpetual Help,
Pray for us.
Saint Alphonsus Marie de Liguori,
Pray for us.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
You may be seated. My beloved brethren, today we begin our third session of our general meeting of the District Superiors of the Society of St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori. We're pleased to have with us Bishop Lane Jackson of our District of the United States of America and Bishop Hippolyte Emily Peglin of the District of all of Africa. Today, Bishop David Puku cannot be with us. We ask that you pray for him as we continue our session here at the General House of the Society of St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori. My beloved brethren, you have your agenda in your notebooks, in your particular languages. Today we want to look at several items in our session. The agenda topic first are the decrees on poverty and temporal goods, SSAL. Number 2, property administration of SSAL. Number 3, the guidelines for financial protocols within chapels, missions, and conventual parishes of SSAL. Tithing, benefactors and contributors, the dealing with our finances of our missions, chapels, and parishes, the budget for every mission, chapel, and conventual parish, and the budget should include monthly stipend for the priest. So we will discuss this in this first session, and if we get through some of this, we will go into the next phase, which will be the financial reports. The quarterly financial reports are to be submitted by each chapel, mission, and conventual parish. Number 6 will be the immigration for those incoming into SSAL and FSAL, our priestly fraternity, for the novices and seminarians. And then we will deal with the legal protections, general liability, global health plans, the international life insurance for our priest, the death benefits, general chapter of SSAL for the bishops and for our priests and religious, the last will and testament documents, estate documents, funeral directives, in case of the death of a bishop or priest. And then we will have our reports from our different districts, and each district will present their report as asked for. So this is our agenda today, and so we ask that we will govern ourselves, and as we are making these presentations, if you have questions or remarks, please give them. Note that we are online. People are watching us all throughout the world as to our sessions here today. We hope and pray that all of you that are with us by way of social media will continue to pray for our Society of St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori. We are Alphonsian Redemptorists, following the charism of St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori, the founder of the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, known as the Redemptorist. So as we now prepare ourselves for our sessions, the Secretary is with us of our General Session. Now, on the decrees concerning poverty and temporal goods of SSAL, as religious, we take the vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and stability. This is what is found in our constitutions as Alphonsian Redemptorists. If we look at our constitutions, you should have your constitutions with you. Today, we ask that you will turn to your constitutions at this time. Now, the constitutions of our society, Article 7, if you look at page 29, and for the French-speaking bishop, we ask that you look at Article 7. And that is chapter 3, dealing with the apostolic community dedicated to Christ the Redeemer. And you should find the information in our Constitution on Article 7, poverty, and that is number 61. Do you have it, brothers? Okay. Now, it says, as missionaries, the Alphonsians will embrace in a spirit of trust the poverty of Christ, who being rich became poor for our sakes, that by his poverty we might become rich. 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. Number 62 of Article 7, they will make every effort to live in the spirit that permeated the community of apostolic times. In this way they become the sign of that fraternal life of Christ's disciples, of whom it is said, the whole group of believers was united, heart and soul. No one claimed for his own use anything that he had, as everything they owned was held in common. So as bishops and priests, we are in religious life. Now, as bishops, we need certain things because we have to, of course, govern our districts. But we don't own anything in reality. It all belongs to the church. Everything we have belongs to the church. Now, someone asked me one time, what about your pectoral cross, your rings? I said, it doesn't belong to me. Because when I die, it is turned over to the church. In this case, everything that we have, all of this that we wear as bishops, it must be turned over to our religious community, because whoever comes after us, it should be passed down to the next bishop. It should be passed down to the next person. and it should be kept in safe keeping within the archives of the community. You can't take this pectoral cross with you to the grave, okay? You'll be buried with what you are supposed to be buried with as a bishop, if you so desire. If I die, I might want to just be buried in my habit. And some people may object to that, but I am a religious, and I belong to a religious community. If I desire to be buried in my full Episcopal garb, then that's one thing. But all that's left doesn't belong to me anymore. I cannot take it to the grave. So it should be kept in safekeeping in the archives of the society. The archives of the society. We leave it with responsible persons within the religious community. Okay, therefore all goods should be simple in style, in keeping with their state, and held in common for common use. So when we are training our novices, then we ought to inform them whether they are going on towards after the first temporal vows into final vows, and if they make application for priesthood and they are accepted, then they must understand that just because they're going into the seminary to study philosophy and theology, scholasticism, that they are religious. That's why the novitiate is so important, because so many religious want to become seculars. And there's a difference between seculars and religious. We know that. And the novitiate will teach them that all things are in common. Did we not read the scriptures here in Acts 4:32? It said the whole group of believers was united, heart and soul. No one claimed for his own use anything that he had, as everything they owned was in common. So as religious, we hold things in common. Whatever the members acquire by their industry or in view of the fact that they are religious, they acquire for the society. For that reason, it must be incorporated in the goods of the community. So if one of our brothers go out and they teach a class, or they go somewhere and someone gives them something, it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the community. It belongs to the community. Without neglecting traditional forms of poverty, they will willingly seek to discover new ways of practicing it, which will be ever more in accord with the gospel and provide both personal and community witness of evangelical poverty. As poor men, let them regard themselves as bound by the law of labor, so that performing his duties, each will contribute to the best of his ability to his own support and that of others. Missionary charity requires of the members that they live a life that is really poor and adapted to the conditions of the poor they are evangelizing. And I want us to understand this. As bishops and priests, we must be very careful not to become like the Protestant bishops and pastors who are, they have filthy lucre. They have all this money and all this wealth and all of this, and they acquire. If we are evangelizing the poor and we become greater than them in our dress, in our manner of life. Now the bishop, because of his lofty call as bishop and high priest of the church, there are certain things that we do have as bishops. But we must be very careful how we live among the people, because the people will look at us and they will say, they despise us because we think that we are far more greater than them, or we have the riches. And instead of just using what we have and being careful. I'm very careful, even with my own personal life. I have many things, But everything I have, bishops, it belongs to the society. Everything. You know, because that's the way it is supposed to be. I don't own anything. If I'm going to be a religious, I must be honest to God and to my brothers. And it's very difficult for people who like to have things, and they don't know how to practice the spirit of poverty. And you know, poverty doesn't say that you walk around with no clothes on. That's to the extreme. That's not what poverty is. Poverty, you have to have the spirit of poverty. I have this book, but this book belongs not to me. This book belongs to the society. You understand? It belongs to the society. It doesn't belong to me. Then number 69 says the members are bound to make a will which is valid in civil law. The obligations of making this, however, may be deferred to the time immediately preceding perpetual vows. So we have to understand this. We need to underline that, because before one makes the final vow, each brother or priest in society or the priestly fraternity, they must have a will. And the will should state that I bequeath everything over to the society. This is how religious communities grow and have grown over the years, because the brothers bequeath. You know, when you die, Bishop, or before you die, you may want to say, well, I bequeath all my religious articles over to the society. My robes, my rings, as a bishop, I bequeath it over to the society. I bequeath any monies that I may have left after my burial to the society, if you decide. You may have nieces and nephews that you may want to give something to. You may have family members that you want to give something to, because over years we acquire. As bishops, people give us many gifts. But as religious, we turn everything over to our brothers. Number 70, to encourage the practice of poverty, the members are allowed to renounce the patrimonial goods they already possess or may acquire in future. If such a renunciation is made, however, it should be undertaken only by members of mature age with the consent of the Superior General. Insofar as possible, it should be made in a manner which is valid in civil law. Members and superiors should take care that this renunciation is made according to the principles of prudence and equity. A legal document is to be drawn up on the matter as protection against any difficulties they might arise. Now, the reason why this is part of our general meeting, because we won't be talking about this very soon, because we have to have an understanding that if a bishop dies or priest dies, what do we do as a community? Are we separated? You know, you do your thing, you do your thing, I do my thing, this brother does his thing, he's buried over there, another one's buried over there. You know, when we get buried, we're buried in the same place. Bishop's buried in the same place with his brothers, and they're buried in the same place, as we talked about, in the same place. The same place. Because this is the way that religious must act. Now, let's go to the next one, number 31 in the English. I don't know what page it is in the French copy. But the Article 8 on obedience. Following the example of Christ, who came to do the will of his Father and to give his life as a redemption for many, the Constitution says in John 6:38, Matthew 20:28, the members, through the vow of obedience, dedicate their own will to God and are obliged to submit their will to their lawful superiors when they issue commands in accordance with the Constitution and statutes. They should bring all their resources of mind and will, as well as their gifts of nature and grace, to the execution of commands and the discharge of the tasks assigned to them. So if you're assigned to do something, you have to do it. Let them do all this in a spirit of faith and love for God's will, realizing they are seeking the kingdom of God and are sharing intimately in the paschal mystery of Christ, which is mystery of obedience. Number 7.2 of Article 8 of our chapter 3. Superiors should be docile to God's will in the exercise of their office, realizing that they will have to give an account of the souls entrusted to them. Hebrews chapter 13:17. They should use their authority in the spirit of service for their brothers so that they show forth how God loves them. They should govern their brothers as sons of God and with respect for the human person, and thus lead them to a submission that is truly voluntary. They should lead the members in such a way that they will cooperate with an active and responsible obedience in applying themselves to their duties and to the activities they undertake. Accordingly, let them willingly listen to the members and win their cooperation for the good of the institute and the church, and thus help them to activate their missionary zeal. All the members are co-responsible and mutually dependent with superiors in carrying out the apostolic mission of the society. The Holy Ghost gives life to the communities and inspires the members with a readiness to serve God in the church and the world. Under his influence, let superiors and the members engage in a dialogue and fraternal discussion. So the bishop, the district superior, or the superior of the priory should learn how to listen sometime to the members. You know, you can be a leader, a superior, but you have to also learn how to listen to them, because they may have something to say and they may need direction, you know, in some kind of way. But under his influence, let superiors members engage in dialogue and fraternal discussion. It doesn't take away from you being a superior, in order that together they may discover God's will and devote themselves to its implementation. For he speaks through the voices of people and the signs of the time. Although all contribute to the making of decision through means of community discussion, nevertheless the superior retains the authority to make the decision in order that what is to be done, unless particular law otherwise states. So the last word is the superior. Lawful superiors can impose formal precepts of obedience on the members of their community concerning matters contained in the constitutions and statutes. Ordinarily, however, they should not use the power unless there is a grave reason and with consent of their consultors. For instance, as Superior General, before I make a decision, I deal with my consultors. That means in our community, we have bishops. The bishops are my consultors. So it's like the Privy Council. We come together, we iron it out, we talk about it, and you will give your take on it, you will give your take on it. But in the end, we have to come to some agreement. But the final decision is the Superior General, the Prime Bishop, because he has to make that final decision. But you still have a right to have your opinion. You have to. You have to engage in dialogue with the Superior General, because the Superior General will not always be right. I'm not God. I will make mistakes. So the bishops will help me, the district superiors will help me make good decisions. When we incarnate men coming from different persuasions, from other traditions, other traditional societies, the applications must come to the general house. They must come first to the general house, and then the vocation director, which is Bishop Jackson, looks at all applications, and then once all of the applications are all together, all of the information is collected and given in that application, then the application is dispersed to the different districts. It doesn't go to the district first. It comes to the general house. The general house has a vocation director. The vocation director looks at all applicants. He must look at all applicants, no matter where they're from. Once he looks at those applicants, he discusses those applicants with the superior general, and then the superior general in the general house says it is okay to send the information to the District of all of Africa, or the district here, or the district here, or the priestly fraternity. Then once those applications are dispersed to those districts, then the district superiors must do their own investigation. But they cannot usurp authority over the general house. The general house has the final authority who will be incarcerated or not. The district superior must make recommendations. The district superior must speak his mind to the superior general after he or they have done their investigation. The investigation should not take long. It's unfair to take forever to investigate. The FBI don't do that. The CIA don't do that. You go to the source, you get the information, you do what you have to do, you collect it. We're not here to police people, because that's not the way of Jesus Christ. We know that many people are very deceiving and so on, but we have to use the spirit of discernment and pray and ask God to help us to understand these things. But we cannot hold back a man's vocation because of our own prejudices, our own way of thinking. We have to open our heart up to other people, because God can use anyone. Look at St. Joseph of Cupertino. St. Joseph of Cupertino, he was very stupid. But the bishop came to the Franciscan monastery and saw St. Joseph of Cupertino in the pig field with the cows and the pigs. And the bishop, he says, I don't want to see you profess. I don't want to talk to you. Take me down to Joseph. And the bishop went down and sat with Joseph. And the bishop said that he learned more from Joseph than he learned from all those lofty professed brothers who thought they knew everything. And they said Joseph could never be a priest. That's what they said. Oh, Joseph could never do this. He's stupid. But the bishop saw something totally different in Joseph. And he said, Joseph, I want you to come to Rome. I want you to study, and you will take your canonical examination. When he was ready, the superior was very upset with the bishop, because the bishop seemed to take over the superior. He didn't. He simply said God was speaking to him. And he took Joseph, and when he got to Rome, all these seminarians and religious were lined up, waiting to go in for canonical examination. And the bishop came out, and when he came out, he saw Joseph of Cupertino. He said, come. He took him ahead of all of them. And he took him in. They had the canonical examination. He passed the canonical examination. When he went back to the Franciscan monastery, they were very upset and jealous. And what did God do with him? God gave him the grace. When he offered Mass, his body lifted up from the ground and ecstasy. Why? Because God chose the simple, dumb, stupid ones to confound those who are the so-called grand, educated ones, and God used him. So my brothers, we have to be very, very careful, not to make bad choices and chase people away because they don't agree with us. Many people don't agree with me, but you can't run away. They may not agree with you, but we have to love them as Jesus loved them. Listen to me. When Jesus chose the 12 men, you have to listen very carefully. When he called each one of them, come follow me, come follow me, come follow me. But when he came to Judas Iscariot, walk with me, he knew that Judas Iscariot had a devil. Jesus knew it. But he still chose him to be an apostle. He knew that Judas Iscariot had a devil. He also knew that Simon would deny him. He knew that. Jesus was God in the flesh. But why did God, listen, why did God, our Lord Jesus, allow Judas to walk with him? Because sometimes you need a balance. We need a balance. If you have everybody in the house that agrees, that's not a good balance. It's good to have agreement. But sometimes you need to have the challenge. You need to have someone that challenges. You need to have someone that doesn't always see it your way. You see, this is the way of Jesus. It proves us. It proves whether we are going to be good stewards. If I have everybody that agrees with me, or you on my side, I like you, you agree with me, you on my side, you agree with me. But that brother over there may not always agree, so we cast him out. You don't belong here. No. That's not the way of Jesus Christ. No, it's not the way of the scripture. It's not the way of religious. Sometimes you have to keep the bad people. Now, if they stay bad and they get worse, then you have to ask the Holy Ghost to help you. As superiors, our job is to be fathers. Sometimes the children need discipline, but we have to discipline in charity, in love. We just don't throw people out, You got to be careful, because the people sometimes we throw out may be the very ones that will be good. They may be good if we work with them. Now, some people will not be good. Some people will not do well. They need to leave. But we need to make sure that when they come to us in the United States, in our house of studies in Cameroon, that we treat them with charity, with kindness. St. Benedict says you must be hospitable. You must be kind. You see, it is very important when you have aspirants. These young people come from or middle-aged people, they come from a world. And we are living in a different time. It's so much worldliness and modernism that the young people, they come to a religious house, they're not going to adjust so fast. We have to give them time. But we can't hold them back. And they get discouraged when you hold them back. You ever heard of the reward system? Sometimes you have to move people along. Because if we have expectations of them that are not realistic. I heard Bishop Jackson tell me one time, he says, when are you going to let those ladies move on to the novitiate? And I said to him, well, they're not ready. And Bishop Jackson said to me, oh, Your Grace, I think they're ready. And I said to him, do you think they're ready? I said to him, then they're ready. There's no need to argue, right? Because he sees that they're ready. Maybe I cannot see that they're ready. Just because I'm superior general doesn't mean that God doesn't speak to him. So I said, okay, now we will work towards novitiate. I emphasize because the obedience is so important in religious life that if we, district superiors, if we are not obedient, then you cannot expect your confreres to be obedient. We have to first of all be obedient to lawful superiors, and then they will be obedient. Be very mindful that they watch us. They watch us. And they say, oh, those bishops, they're not even obedient. How can we priests and brothers in community be obedient? They tell us to do, but they don't do. Well, remember what Jesus said in the Gospels. He said to the Pharisees and the scribes, you command people to do things that you won't do yourself. You like to be called your grace, your excellency, your eminence. You like to be called Father. And Jesus said, woe be to you scribes and Pharisees. You see, Jesus always got on those Pharisees because they thought they were greater than others. We should not, in religious life, we're all brothers. All brothers. There's a difference between secular priesthood and religious life. Now, number 3 of the obedience, lawful superiors can impose formal precepts of obedience on the members of their community concerning matters contained in the Constitution and statutes. We should not make our confreres do things that are not written in these statutes. You understand what I'm saying? Right. If they're not written in the statutes, if they're not written in the Bible, then we should not try to make them do things. The precepts of obedience is based on what's lawfully right in our Constitution and statutes. Okay? The members, because of the obedience they have professed before God, are bound to obey such precepts willingly and promptly. So, that's why novitiate is so important. Because in the novitiate, the novices, postulancy for 6 months is called the growing stage.
An introduction.
Is the introduction. But in the novitiate, the 2 years of novitiate, it's a time where these men must work very hard in their own conforming to God's will. St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori spoke about the conformity to God's will. You hear me talk about it all the time. I don't talk about what I don't live. Conformity to God's will. If you're not going to be conformed to God's will, you're going to have trouble in religious life. Now, 74 of our obedience. Since the fundamental norm of religious life is following of Christ as presented in the gospel, this must be considered as the supreme rule in our society. Note that it says supreme rule. If we can't obey, then we cannot be part of this society. Superiors and members then united in community by the Holy Ghost must observe constitutions, statutes, and decrees legitimately promulgated, looking on them as the authentic means whereby individual confreres and communities show their consent, fidelity to God's will. For instance, we have to teach our bishops and priests and religious that the church fathers, the past encyclicals prior to the Second Vatican Council, must be adhered and obeyed. So, and we have to study them in much as we can. In this way, they carry out the mission of Christ, who said of himself, I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And that's where self-will, you get rid of self-will and pride and arrogance. You got to get rid of all of that in religious life. Self-will, how I see it. Evangelical obedience contributes to the true development of the human person dedicated to Christ. It bears witness before the world to the genuine freedom of the children of God and to their common union in Christ and fills the missionaries with apostolic energy. And the vow and oath of stability is made in a perpetual profession. The members will add to the vows mentioned above a vow and oath of stability by which they will bind themselves to live until death in the society. On our habits there are 4 buttons. The 4 buttons: poverty, chastity, obedience, stability. That's what these 4 buttons represent. Huh? Okay? Poverty, chastity, and obedience, and stability. Now, I do want to say a word about the chastity part. Because if you really think that all religious are chaste, they are not. Now, I'm very hard on this, because this is one of the biggest problems in Catholicism. So many young men enter into religious life and they have these immoral behaviors, these proclivities of wrongdoing, masturbation, pornography, uncleanness. This must be dealt with in postulancy. They should not go into novitiate if they cannot release themselves of these immoral behaviors. First of all, this is some of the stuff that should be talked about when we take them in incardination, by application. When we sit down with them, like you sit here, I sit here with you, you should say, do you got a problem with pornography? Do you have a problem with your flesh? Do you have a problem with masturbation? Do you have a problem with lust? Do you understand these things? Because if so, the seminarian, the candidate, will have problem in religious life. They will cause a problem. And this is where the homosexuality comes in, the bisexuality comes in, the problems within a religious life. We must have a pure society. And it's very difficult. And the young men, this is why many young men will not come. Because they cannot let go of sensual pleasures. If a bishop, a priest, or religious has a second office, or if he has, women, you'd be surprised. God shows me things. Many bishops in the world, they have concubines. They have women on the side that do things for them, and we've got to be very careful, because eventually it will come out. My mother used to say something to me. She said, Sherman, she said, what you do in the dark will come to the light. Whatever you do in the dark, people you don't think, but God sees, and then He reveals it. He reveals it. He shows it out, and it can be very big. So, as religious, we must be chaste. I know what chastity is. Religious chastity brings with it its obligation of perfect continence and celibacy. It reveals the presence of God's kingdom on earth. Now, the members of the society, giving themselves to the same mystery of love, choose celibacy for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 19:12. They do so dedicate themselves as individuals and as a community to God and the mission of Christ. John 17:19. So that they may concern themselves wholeheartedly with the things of the Lord, love and serve their neighbor. 1 Corinthians 7:32. Manifest the church's own love of Christ. 2 Corinthians 11:2. And proclaim the future realities of heavenly life. St. Luke chapter 20, verses 35-36. Those whom the Father has given this grace are so captivated by what the kingdom of God offers them that only by choosing their religious chastity can they respond personally and fully to God's love for them. It's against nature. We are sexual beings. God made us like that. But when we choose religious life, we must bring our lower parts, our passions, under subjection, or we become the slave of that, and we no longer can serve God. We no longer can serve God. This, brothers, is the problem with so many young men. That's why we can't get them. Because the young men and middle-aged men, the world presents sex, sex, sex. Everything is sex. And so when they come into religious life, they have a hard time because this is not controlled. Let me give you a secret. Many young men over the years that I have known have had serious problems sexually. And when it's discovered, it is very hard on them because they never looked in themselves to see, I got a problem here. I got a serious problem and I don't know how to control myself. Now, do we throw young men out of the monastery or of the priory religious life when they have this problem? No. You have to work with them. You have to work with them. Now, if you work with them, this is where the bishop comes and a good priest, a good confessor, because if you have a bad confessor that doesn't have understanding of the human person. This is why every priest should have classes in psychology and pastoral counseling, because many priests are not good pastoral counselors. You know, you have people come to you in the church, they need help, and the first thing we want to do is condemn them and throw them out of the church. No, Christ came to save that which was lost. We have to, we are human beings, we have our problems, our issues, but God knows what is in us, and He has come to save, and this is what we have been called to do as Alphonsian Redemptorists. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to preach the gospel, to go and get the people who are downtrodden and people who are out there. So if they come to us, we cannot throw these young men away. Work with them as a father. Love them correctly, morally, above board. And maybe they need an exorcism. They need to be delivered from this bad habit. This bad habit. This sin. They need prayer. If you throw them out, God will get you, because He said He came to save that which is lost. And if we throw them out without helping them, we throw them out to the wolves, and things do not get any better for them. And that is not the way of the religious life. Now, I've given you these decrees on our vows and temporal goods. Are there any questions? Any questions, brothers? Do we have any comments? I'm going to ask that Bishop Jackson will give some comments at this time, if you want, on the 3 vows and the 4th one, the stability. You know, just give some comments. And Bishop Hippolyte will give comments in French for the sake of Bishop Oku when he listens to our session.
Well, as you indicated when you were speaking about poverty, poverty doesn't mean that you have to have less than what you need, because we all have we are all are entitled to have food to eat, clothes to wear, and various items that we use in our daily lives. And as a religious, poverty simply means that you do not own anything. You have things that are for your use. And it's very pertinent to the life of a religious. Chastity is very, as His Grace has indicated, is very difficult for some people simply because the kind of world that we live in today, everything is sexually oriented. You can't go to a movie unless you see a scene with sex in it. You can't play video games. It's always some type of sexual content that's indicated. We need to learn about chastity at home, because the Word of God tells us basically that fornication is a sin, and that we should not be dealing with our bodies in a sexual manner, even by ourselves, because our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And children need to be educated early about sexual activity. And they have to watch out for people that are around them, people that tend to influence them and take advantage of them. But when we come into religious life, we should be prepared to know what chastity is all about.
Now, yeah, Your Excellency, on that note, is this why it is very important that we emphasize that priests ought to be celibate?
Well, priests...
And religious ought to be celibate and take the vows of chastity, because they shouldn't be married.
Right, and then too, St. Paul speaks on that. He says that he would that we would be as he. Paul was not married, and well, we don't know of any marriage that's indicated in the scriptures. However, he did not participate in any sexual activity, but he said that if you burn, that you should marry, which makes legal sexual activity. Fornication is sinful all throughout the scriptures. The vow of obedience. We all know that obedience is very, very difficult. Most people do not want other people telling them what to do. I don't care what it's about. And it's very, very hard to be obedient. But you, as a religious, obedience is very, very proper, because you have to be obedient to your superior and those who have charge over you. And you should be obedient in all things. And if something is sinful, then you should question that. But I don't think the average superior would ask you or tell you to do something that is sinful. But though the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience are the ground rules for anybody in the religious life. And for me, it has always been, my guideline, and for my religious life, it's enabled me to be a better religious when I observe the vows. And it's very, very important. And it takes a special person. It takes God's person to take on these promises or vows.
Thank you so much, Bishop Jackson. Now we have some comments. Your take on the information presented, Bishop Hippolyte.
Ok, merci. Bonjour, Excellence, bonsoir, Pipou. J'espère que vous aurez ces commentaires que nous faisons et ces explications que le Secrétaire général a dit tout à l'heure. Sur le vœu, la pauvreté, l'obéissance, la chasteté et le vœu de stabilité. D'abord, la pauvreté. Il a clairement revenu sur la construction, il n'a rien inventé. Il a dit que la pauvreté ne veut pas dire que ce n'est pas la vie que nous portons. Il faut pas être nu. Non, c'est un esprit du cœur. C'est le cœur qui doit être pauvre. Hein. La vie de la pauvreté doit être un témoignage avec les gens avec lesquels nous vivons. Nous avons pris un exemple. Si on va par exemple, on vit avec des personnes, il ne faut pas leur montrer que tu es trop riche. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut essayer de vivre à leur manière, même si on doit avoir certaines choses pour nous, pour notre bien-être. Et puis, il est revenu sur l'article 69 de la Constitution, où il dit que il faut faire un testament pour la vie de la communauté. C'est-à-dire que si par exemple j'ai la croix ici, cette croix, si Dieu me rappelle, si je meurs, c'est la croix de la communauté. Et même si j'ai mon anneau, si je ne suis plus là et que j'ai l'autre qu'on me met, l'autre reste, va dans la communauté. Donc l'article 69 est très très important. Et puis il dit que nous devons écouter les consulteurs. Il ne faut pas dire que je suis bishop, je suis évêque, je suis supérieur du district, je fais ce que je veux. Non. Il faut être humble, il faut écouter les consulteurs et faire attention au discernement par rapport à ce que nous prenons. Bref, il a dit que c'est un devoir de charité. Il faut avoir un devoir de charité. Il a même dit que Jésus, qui était Dieu, a appelé Judas Iscariote. Il l'a appelé alors qu'il savait qui il était. Mais il a appelé Judas parmi les 12 apôtres. Et Judas est venu. Donc il faut être patient envers des personnes que nous rencontrons. Et puis, sur l'obéissance, il a dit que c'est une vertu qui n'est pas facile. Mais si on veut être obéissant, il faut faire la volonté de Dieu. Il faut respecter les supérieurs. Et que la dernière décision revient au supérieur général. C'est-à-dire qu'on peut avoir des consultations. Par exemple, toi, il peut te consulter mon Seigneur, il me consulte. Mais la dernière décision, quand il apprend. Et c'est ça parce que souvent, il faut trouver quelqu'un qui prend une dernière décision. Et parfois, ce n'est pas ce que nous aimons, mais c'est la volonté de Dieu. Donc, il a parlé de la conformité à la volonté de Dieu. Conformité à la volonté de Dieu. Parce que si nous ne sommes pas obéissants, on va passer à côté. On ne sera pas conforme. C'est un thème qui est très important, hein? La conformité à la volonté de Dieu. Donc il faut, si on sort de cette obéissance, mais il a dit, il ne faut jamais laisser quelqu'un faire, un confrère faire quelque chose qui est en dehors des constructions de la communauté ou de ces écritures de la Bible. Constitution, écriture sainte. Il ne faut jamais me laisser. Donc si tu veux faire quelque chose, tu viens voir les constructions, tu regardes la Bible. Non, c'est très important. Il est aussi revenu sur la chasteté, qui est un gros problème parce que, et il a fait la différence entre les prêtres religieux et les prêtres séculiers. De toute façon, quand on soit prêtre séculier ou religieux, l'option c'est le célibat. Quand on soit prêtre séculier ou religieux, l'option c'est le célibat. Et puis les postulants qui viennent au noviciat ou au postulat, il faut causer avec eux, s'asseoir et causer avec eux, lui demander qu'est-ce qu'il fait de la masturbation, est-ce qu'il a un problème même avec la pornographie, est-ce qu'il a un problème avec l'homosexualité, et qu'il faut aider ces jeunes. Il faut les aider parce que ils viennent dans le monde et la télévision montre tout. D'où l'importance de la direction spirituelle. Direction spirituelle. Il faut les aimer. Il faut les aimer et avoir l'espérance qu'ils pourront changer. La dernière chose, c'est la stabilité. Bon, c'est très important le vœu de la stabilité. C'est bien dit dans l'article 9, numéro 76 des Constitutions, à la page 35, que en faisant les vœux perpétuels, les membres ajouteront un autre vœu, un serment de stabilité. Un serment de stabilité. Et donc, il s'engagera à vivre toute leur vie jusqu'à la mort dans la société. Ça, c'est le mariage, hein, pour le meilleur et pour le pire. Ok. Ok.
Ah, his French is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And Bishop Hippolyte, also what we want to do, Bishop Jackson, is emphasize that the society can consider men that have been married before they became priests. We can consider on a case-by-case basis, because there may be a man and the woman, she must consent to give up certain marital duties as far as the sexual or the marital bed is concerned. But a bishop, a district superior, must use wisdom in taking men that are married into the priesthood. Now, we would suggest that if a man comes from the Anglican Church or the Lutheran Church, then we can consider them, because it won't be so hard. Now, Pope Pius XII permitted men that came from the Anglican Communion and the Lutheran Church. But we must be very careful. Even in that, the district superior or the vocation director must make sure that when he sits down with this man, he has to sit down with the wife. And the wife must sign a document that states that she will not interfere with any of his priestly duties, that she surrenders him to the church. Now, my advice is that you don't take in young men who are just married. Take in more mature men whose children are no longer in their home and whose children are, what do you say, are mature and are not bringing scandal. You know? That is very, very important, because if you have a priest whose children are unruly, then you have problems. Now, is it biblical? It is biblical, because in the early days of Christianity, the bishops and the priests were married. In the Orthodox churches of the of the Catholic Church, many priests are married in the Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, the Antiochian Church. They are married, and yes, and Orthodox, Greek and Russian Orthodox Catholics. Now, so we must be open-minded. This is one of the biggest problems of traditional Catholics. They become closed-minded and so Romanish that they fail to see that God can use a man that has been married to enter into the priesthood. But again, we must be very, very careful. He must be a mature man. The wife must be willing to submit and surrender her responsibilities, that this man will have no interruption in any way, because that's one of the biggest problems if the man has a lot of interruption. For instance, if he's called to do mass and she wants him to go to the store with her, or she wants him to go to movies, and he has priestly duties, well, then there's a big problem. So all of that must be understood in the beginning. Okay, so I want to make mention of that, but it is not our, in the Roman rite, it is not our way of life. Priests should come in and they should be celibate men. Maybe not virgins, because some men have already experienced, they have, eaten from the forbidden fruit, and they are now, they understand the way of life with a woman, but they have now surrendered that and said, God, I choose you instead of that. And that's acceptable, because in this day and time, I'm quite sure all of us understand as bishops, we're not going to find too many virginal men in this time. You're not going to find too many virginal men. You got a virginal man, but once you have a virginal man, that's a good thing. But some men will not be virginal men. Now, before I go to... yes.
For those men, the first will come Anglican Church and Lutheran Church, they need your dispensation.
Very good.
Yeah.
Bishop is saying that there must be a dispensation. So if you investigate, if you have a man come to you in your district, or Bishop, you have a man come to us in the United States district, and he wants to be a priest, and he's married, you have to get all the information, collect all the information. Then once you collect all the information, then determinations are made, and then once all of that's made, you investigate it, their children, their home, their spouse, their living, and where they live, how they live. Then you should write a letter to the Superior General asking for a special dispensation. We will not accept men that have been divorced without a nullity, because the canon law is very clear. You have to, if the marriage was annulled, then he can be accepted. But if he's divorced, it's a defect. It's a defect because to ordination, okay, is a defect. So we have to be very, very careful to that. Now, I do want to mention one more thing to us superiors in our Constitution. Yes. On the number 44, bishops, and in your French copy, you will find it. That's the second section of our constitutions and statutes. the government at general level. Article 3, well, actually, page 46. Page 46, the Superior General and his vicar.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have it, Bishop? Those are the constitutions, right, what you're holding? Yes,
Okay.
it's right there. Did you?
Number 98. Or number 91.
Number 114, the Superior General and his vicar.
Okay, good.
The secretary, can you make sure that the bishop, you don't have a copy of the, that's the priestly fraternity, yeah, yes. That should.
Number 101. 10.
The Superior General and his vicar.
So 101. One chapter is chapitre.
Article 4.
Look. Okay. Okay. Okay.
You see? Now, this is important
Okay.
because if something happens to me as Superior General and founder of our society, we must know what to do next. The Superior General, to be elected, because the next Superior General is supposed to be elected. Now, I want to say this because I want to do a decree. Because we are a young society, I do not want confusion if something goes wrong with me. Secretary can take these minutes. If something goes wrong with me, I would rather already have in mind an appointee for the next Superior General. Now, if that Superior General will serve out a certain period of time because of the transition. So if something happens to me, it's almost like choosing a coadjutor. Now, since we are not in ordinary circumstances, we do not have jurisdiction. So we do not have coadjutors in religious life. So what do we do in religious life? We choose a person like a vicar that works with the superior. So the bishop will choose the vicar, who is like a coadjutor. So if something happens to me, the coadjutor or the vicar will take over that transitional period and will remain in the office for 2 years. After the 2 years, there must be an election of a superior general. Now, the vicar becomes superior general if something happens to me. He becomes automatically superior general by my appointment. That's the privilege that I have. Now, going by the Constitution and statutes, we must have an election, okay?
After 2 years.
I'm sorry. Yes, 2 years, after 2 years. So, because that transition from me to the vicar, and then give them 2 years, and then the society will come together and will have in the general chapter an election of a superior general. Now, to be elected superior general, a member must be perpetually professed priest, having lived for at least 7 years in the society since perpetual profession, and must be at least 35 years of age. So they have to be in our religious life for 7 years. The superior general, as supreme moderator, must always be a bishop, whose jurisdiction is the society. Now, the reason why I'm going over this is because in the Society of St. Pius X, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, he consecrated 5 bishops. The last bishop for the society was Bishop Fowley. Then something went wrong, and it was not in their constitutions that it should always be a bishop. So in our constitution, it states the moderator, the superior general, must always be a bishop. Because that gives us foundation so that our priests will never be without a bishop to confirm, to ordain. So our society will always have bishops. Now, St. Alphonsus Marie de Liguori, he was founder of the Redemptorists, but he was a bishop. He became a bishop. He had to do the work of a bishop like we do. You know, he was religious, but he also was a bishop. He didn't want to be a bishop, but he followed the way of being a bishop. We are bishops. So as Bishop Hippolyte was saying the other day, we have to set that foundation. We have to make sure this is sure and secure, so that when we teach our confreres this Constitution, they understand that they cannot elect anyone that's not a bishop. So if there's 3 of you, and you're still alive, something happens to me. Bishop is still alive, and Bishop Baku is still alive. There must be an election among the society. Now, so it says here, the society will always have priests ordained by her bishops, and that the apostolic succession will not be interrupted. Because what you don't want is all these different people from different apostolic successions and all these different groups. We want to keep the continuity, our line of succession. And if we receive bishops from other jurisdictions, it is the duty of the Superior General and his consultors to investigate fully to see if the line of apostolic succession is valid. Now, I did that with Bishop Baku, and it is the valid line. Because I did my own investigation, and it took me 4 months, but I did everything that needed to be done, and I told you too that I was going to accept him, but no more other bishops can come to us without our deliberation and consultation. No more. So if another bishop wants to come, he can make application to us. He has to understand that he has to enter religious life. He has to go through everything. Do you know when a bishop leaves a diocese and he wants to retire from active duty of being a bishop and he goes into Franciscans, he has to become a postulant. Yeah. He has to go through the whole thing. It doesn't matter whether he and he has to take this off. But the good part about it, he's still a bishop.
Yeah.
And once he goes through all the process, the religious community is blessed because they have a bishop in the midst who can help them and keep them straight, you know. But a lot of bishops that become religious, they sort of become part of the brotherhood, and they don't want that responsibility of being like that, and they don't want to be abbots. They would rather just be joined in with everyone else. But they are permitted to wear the zucchetto and they're permitted to wear their pastoral ring
Yeah.
because they're bishops. You can't take that away, you know. So it's very important. We don't want our line interrupted.
No. My question is about la bishop name. He's bishop for he's a super fraternity.
Bishop David.
No, David Pipiku.
Yes.
He is not for the society.
No,
He's
but he must report to the society.
I know. My opinion is that it's possible that the bishop for this for fraternity can be elected to be a general superior for the society.
No.
Ah.
No. The bishop for fraternity, the reason why he's a bishop of the fraternity is because he chooses to be in the fraternity at this time. If he decides that he wants to become a religious in the society, he doesn't have to go through all of the steps because he's already gone through postulancy novitiate. He doesn't need to do that because the canon law states it. You don't need to do all that because he's coming from one thing to the other. He must understand the charism. Well, he does understand the charism. He's a priestly fraternity of St. Alphonsus, so he has to read everything about St. Alphonsus. He has to read our constitutions, which he has already done. He understands these things. Now, good question, Bishop, because that's a very good question. What is Bishop Baku's responsibility? His responsibility is, his appointment is that he is over the priestly fraternity. The reason why you want a bishop over the priestly fraternity is because when other priests who do not feel that they can handle religious life, but they want to be associated with our society, they can join the priestly fraternity with commitments, which means that they are seculars and not religious. That's what the priestly fraternity is all about. Let me explain it another way. Let's go to the Dominicans. Listen.
Okay.
The Dominican order, they take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They are a religious order. But they have a third order, and they now have a priestly fraternity of St. Dominic. For men who are seculars that would like to be a part of the charism, the spirit of St. Dominic, but do not feel that God is calling them to live in community in religious life. Now, the priestly fraternity, they can, if, for instance, there are two priests that want to live in the same house, they're fraternal brothers. They are obligated to pray the office, to pray the rosary, everything in their constitutions, which we will go over briefly, they can do. But the bishop of the priestly fraternity really doesn't have a vote in the society because he's not a society bishop. He's a bishop of priestly fraternity. So Bishop Baku is a priest of a bishop of the priestly fraternity. Now, as Superior General, I can make certain dispensations because we are growing, which means that he can attend our sessions because he must know everything.
Yes.
Just in case he does cross over, then he doesn't have to learn all this stuff. He has the knowledge. Okay? Now, Bishop Baku cannot ordain anyone or consecrate anyone without my permission. Which means that he has to, say for instance, a man is coming, and he's coming from another society that we have questioned about the bishop ordaining him. There's a defect, and he makes this priest makes application to the priestly fraternity, which you will get, because once those applications come in, you get them, then you dispense them. So if you see a man that's going to be good for priestly fraternity, you hand him over to Bishop Aku. You see, and if they're for us, whether the United States or Cameroon, then you send the information over to them. But Bishop Baku is a bishop, but he does not have authority to ordain or consecrate without the authority of the Superior General. If you read the constitutions of the priestly fraternity, it's almost parallel or sequel to our constitutions. But it's slightly different with certain things. Okay? So he's not going to go around laying hands, and he knows the protocol. And yeah, and he'll write me and say, this young man, he's 35 years old, 40 years old. He's coming from Society of Christ the King. The high priest. I'm just using some words. But we have a problem with the ordination. What bishop ordained him? So Bishop Aku investigates, and he sees that there's a defect in how was the proper pontificals used or whatever, and he says, well, it wasn't used. Bishop Aku requests, can one of the bishops of our society come or will you permit me to ordain? Now, can Bishop Aku consecrate other bishops? No. No. It is the right of the Superior General to consecrate bishops along with his bishops. Because if we have all the bishops consecrating people, we're going to have problems. All the bishops, no. This is what's the problem with old Roman Catholicism and all these, you have to have a governance. And since we're a religious community, we have a governance. It's a way of doing things. So that was a good question, a good observation, because we need to understand the role of the fraternity as opposed to the role of the society. He doesn't have that authority. Now, as I said, if I decide that he should be a part of our session, not as an observer, but as a part, then I can make that decision, because we are growing.
Yeah.
And once we begin to grow more and more, it would be hard. But I'm going to be very honest with you, brothers. I don't see yet any need to consecrate anyone right now. I must be very careful, because if we consecrate certain people, it had to be loyal like him, trustworthy. Trustworthy like you. You could go out and consecrate someone. If you was a wayward bishop, Bishop Jackson, or Bishop Hippolyte, you could have went out a long time ago and ordained, consecrated people without my permission. But because you are loyal to God and loyal to your society and me, you wouldn't do that. This is why people are jealous of this society, because there's structure and order, and we don't have our bishops doing things, ordaining. There must be mandate. If the mandate is not given by the authority, then the ordination, consecrations are invalid, and is a grave defect, and is a mortal sin, and whoever does that can be excommunicated, because it's a grave offense. And That's where the code and canon law comes in, because now we have to move from the constitutions and the statutes and move now to the canon law of 1917. So we have to be very, very careful. But at this present time, brother bishops, I don't see us consecrating anyone. Now, if, and I have to always speak this because I'm in the seat now, but I don't have to be in the seat forever. If I know that something is happening to me and I'm not going to get better, I got to use common sense. I'm not going to wait till I'm like this to try to, I'm not going to be in my right mind. So I have to be able to pass on the succession with the 2 bishops we have to another bishop, because you're going to need a quorum. You got to have 3 or 5. Now, as the society grows, the superior has to use common sense. I cannot travel all over the globe every year during Episcopal visitations. You will need to have regional superiors eventually, and district superiors in other areas, because we don't need any regional superiors now, but we will need them later. But we will need district superiors, I would say, about another 2 years. Another bishop, because you need a bishop for Asia. You need a bishop for Europe. We have one for America. We have one for Africa. And we need one for South America. You got to have bishops in those places to protect the flock, because if not, people will come in. When I look at Bishop Jackson, maybe I see too much. I see youth. I've been knowing him for now 40 years. We went to school together. He was my supervisor. He taught me in mental health. He taught me in Charles Drew. Gave me my first job there at Charles Drew Mental Health Center in Philadelphia. So we went to school together. But I look at him, I still see young youth in him. I see old age, yes. But I also see that he still has life. And he should retire. But in reality, he should be retired. But he still has loyalty and service to the church, because I'm going to be very honest, I think he would die if he did not serve. Because he would have nothing really to do, nothing to live for. So I think that, if Bishop can hold on for another 5 years, within those 5 years, he will have to be replaced, because you can't take him to 90 years old. It's unfair. Yeah, he would have to be an advisor with the right to vote in the society, but not say, oh, we don't want him no more. But we have to replace him. That's the reality, and the time will come where he will tell me, I can't serve anymore. Physically, I can't. But I want him to tell me that, But if something happens to me as Superior General, I don't want to be so sick that something happens to our society. There have to be someone that comes after me and know what they're doing. That's why it's good that you know everything. Most likely it's going to be him anyway, Bishop. Because you're going to have to know everything. Everything. Every day you must study and commit it to the head, because practice your English constantly, and because you never know what God has in store, Bishop Hippolyte, and we have to prepare for future. We have to speak about this because it's a reality today. Otherwise the society has no future. We have to speak on these things, because this office, I don't own the office. this is God's office, and I'm only a steward of the mysteries. I'm a caretaker. But once the Lord comes and he says, Sherman, your time is up, God gives it to someone else. And it's okay, because that's how it's supposed to be. Life develops, it doesn't die, you see? And but we must be very careful, because I hear you. I hear what Bishop Jackson and you are saying. We have to be careful. And because many men will come, will want to be bishops, priests, and we just can't grow the society with numbers, and the men are not sincere. They have to be sincere, and they must be religious and disciplined, and follow our Constitution, statutes, and rule of the society. You want to convey this, a bunch of the information to the...
Ok. Bon, mon soeur Pico, tu as suivi sa grâce beaucoup parler. Il parle de la réalité de ce qui est fait. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut penser un jour à la succession, parce qu'il n'est pas éternel. Dieu peut l'appeler à tout moment. Et donc, il est clair, comme il l'a dit, parce que j'aime prendre des notes, comme il l'a dit, pour les prêtres mariés, c'est-à-dire que comme certains viennent des anglicans, des luthériens, comme le pape Pie XII a fait, il faut voir cas par cas comme le prévoit le droit canonique. Cas par cas. Et puis, si jamais on les prend, se rassurer que leurs époux ne vont pas interférer dans ce que nous faisons. Et donc, mais pas quelqu'un qui est divorcé, qui vient demander d'être prêtre chez nous, on ne le prend pas. Alors, il a beaucoup insisté sur sa succession en disant que on peut voir à la page 49, donc numéro 114, le supérieur général et son vicaire. Il a dit, et là c'est très important, il a dit quelque chose lui arriverait, son vicaire va gouverner pour 2 ans. Pour 2 ans, après ces 2 ans, il convoque le chapitre général et puis on fait l'élection du nouveau supérieur général. Et comme c'est écrit, il doit être pour un pouvoir perpétuel, il doit être d'au moins 35 ans. Alors il a apporté certaines précisions en disant que il faut réfléchir pour ce cas, parce que il n'est pas éternel. Un jour il va partir. Donc, et que le supérieur général devrait toujours être un évêque et non un prêtre. Il a pris le cas de la fraternité Saint-Pie-X où Monseigneur Félé était le dernier, mais il a voulu sortir de ce que Monseigneur Lefebvre avait dit. Et aujourd'hui, c'est un prêtre qui est le supérieur général. Il dit que ça ne doit jamais être chez nous. Et donc, et il a dit qu'on ne peut pas être ordonné un prêtre ou bien un évêque sans son mandat. Il faut toujours lui informer. Je crois pas que voilà, ramasser en tout ce qu'il a pu dire. Merci.
Okay, that's very good. And did you explain to him about the difference between society and fraternity?
Yeah, la fraternité, il y aura une copie. Il y aura des copies.
Yes.
Copie. Alors, la fraternité, le peuple de la fraternité, ce sont les peuples qui ne font pas de vœux, mais les commitments, c'est-à-dire que les serments, les engagements. Alors, mais ils peuvent vivre à deux, faire le divin office ensemble, prier ensemble, vivre ensemble, mais ils ne font pas les vœux comme les membres de la société. Donc là, c'est différent, mais il doit connaître le charisme de Saint Alphonse Marie de Liguori. Il doit bien connaître le charisme et tout ce qui est constitué dans les documents écrits. Et donc, c'est la différence. Et vous êtes leur supérieur, et donc, vous êtes associé à la société.
Bishop explained to him that no bishop can consecrate or ordain anyone without mandate.
I told him. The first thing.
Now, let's go back to the Superior General. It says to be elected Superior General, a member must be a perpetual professed priest, having lived at least 7 years in society since perpetual profession, and must be at least 35 years of age. The Superior General, as supreme moderator, must always be a bishop whose jurisdiction is the society wherever she is found. The society will always have priests ordained by her bishops, and that the apostolic succession will not be interrupted. The society will always inform the diocesan ordinary that our society is present in his diocese as a traditional society. Now, when I wrote this, when this was done, we thought that it was respectful to speak with the Roman bishop in the diocese. But at this point, they have no respect for us, and we should not impose ourselves, because it will always cause a problem. Now, if a district superior wants to present himself to the diocesan ordinary of the Roman Church, just on a friendly basis, to say that we are here in your diocese. Now look at this. This is a problem. When a district superior of a religious community goes to another bishop of the diocese or the Roman Curia and say, we are in your diocese and we're not here to take any members, and we're not here to do this, that, and the other, and we will not do, we should not surrender ourselves that way. Because then we become, it's almost like they're our bosses.
Yeah.
We're dormant.
Yeah, we can't do anything without you. We are a religious community, and we are permitted as missionaries to go wherever. Okay, so I want us to understand that, and all that's listening by way of our social media. The Superior General of the Society and as President of the General Council has been, before all else, the duty of seeing that the mission entrusted to the Society by the Church is properly carried out. Consequently, he must seek to give new vitality to the apostolic life of the Society in accordance with the constitutions and statutes, decrees, guidance of the General Chapter. Therefore, either himself or through another, he shall visit the districts and regions. You see, so if I can't do it, I may say, Bishop Hippolyte, the General House will send you money. We want you to go to Nigeria. We will send you money. We want you to go to the Philippines. We will send you the money to travel, because it should not be a burden on the district to travel in places. This is why we have to ask for our benefactors to help us and contributors, so that we can have money in the treasure for our bishops to travel. Even Bishop Jackson, I may say, well, Bishop Jackson, can you go to New York to this church that wants to become part of us? Bishop Jackson will take an assistant with you and do an investigation in Philadelphia, in New York, in Delaware, in Camden. And Bishop will go to Asia. It might be a long trip, or Nigeria, or one of the, because Africa is so big, or South America, and Brazil, Argentina, wherever we are located, because if I can't go as Superior General, I ask someone else to go in my stead. Now, when you go in my stead, you speak for me.
Yeah.
Automatically, they have to respect what you say, with a mandate.
This is why I think not now, in the future, the General Superior need to have his visitor, his canonic visitor, because he come in in his name. Huh?
Very important.
He come in his name. He come to make sure if the direction superior do exactly what the direction superior has to do.
Yes.
Yeah, the canonic visitor is very, very, very important.
The canonical visitor.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So in our society, as I said, he can send anyone, or in this case, I would send the correct person
Okay.
to represent us. It should be another bishop,
Okay.
okay? Or a seasoned priest.
No.
It can be one of the superiors
Yeah.
under the district superior.
Oh yeah. You can do one priest.
Yeah.
That's a go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He has your mandate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I think we should say to Bishop Baku that although he belongs to priestly fraternity, his responsibilities are different than the society religious, but he can be asked by the Superior General if he needs to represent in an investigation, and that he should be prepared to do so.
Yeah. Alors, le supérieur général, il disait que dans l'article là, numéro B, 114, il est clair que le modérateur doit toujours être un évêque, on l'a déjà dit, dont la juridiction ne souffre aucun doute. Donc on ne questionne pas. Maintenant, on n'est pas obligé, hein, il avait écrit ça pour dans un cas normal, la société peut informer l'évêque diocésain de sa présence. Mais l'autre chose qui est délicate, c'est que dès qu'on le fait, on devient subordonné à l'évêque du diocèse. Hein, et donc, il n'y a pas d'utilité à cela. Parce que nous avons notre mission, nous avons notre cadre, et puis c'est important. Et j'ai demandé, est-ce qu'il ne pourrait pas avoir un visiteur canonique? Il a dit, effectivement, c'est important, parce que j'ai pensé que le visiteur canonique ne peut pas seulement être le supérieur du district. Le supérieur du district peut être affairé ailleurs, et le visiteur canonique vient pour voir effectivement certaines choses, et même aider même le supérieur. Donc, il a dit que dans le cas à venir, dans les jours à venir, par exemple, vous, mon cher Pipou, vous pouvez être mandaté pour ce genre de choses, pour investiguer, voilà, et bien voir de vos yeux ce qu'il vous a envoyé faire. Voilà.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop, you have anything to say about it?
No.
Okay, so let's go to 115B. The Superior General, as the one who principally activates, coordinates the society, must apply himself to understand ever more thoroughly the mind of the church and its needs, especially in places where the society exercises its ministry. He should also endeavor to deepen his understanding of the mission of the congregation of the church. The Superior General is the official representative of the entire society. He sees to it, moreover, that the society has due contact with the Holy See. We can wipe that out now, because we do not have any contact with, you can take that out, with Holy See. So we should take that out of this particular part of our Constitution. When it was written, I had the idea that we would eventually, with Pope Benedict XVI, maybe there would be some way of entering back to Rome, but Rome is in heresy at this time. We cannot go and listen to them at this time. Okay? The Superior General may resign his office. There it is. In the presence of the General Chapter or in the presence of the General Consultors. Which means that, say today I want to resign, I can resign today. Okay? But in the latter instance, confirmation by the Holy See, that was there, is required when we are in perfect communion with Rome. Yeah, I have it here. So, if we are in perfect communion with the real Rome, then I have to go to the Holy See and say I want to resign. A resignation be regarded as accepted. The Vicar of the Superior General is elected by the General Chapter from among the general consulters. He takes the place of the superior general when he is absent or impeded. In the event of his death or termination of his office, the vicar succeeds him both in office and title until the next ordinary general chapter. Should the vicar general renounce his office to be impeded, provision is to be made according to the norms of the general statutes. Now, I mentioned this. It's again, it would be a coadjutor in the normal circumstances in the Diocesan Act. But since we're not clerics in the secular, we have a vicar of the superior general and a canonical visitor that will be appointed by, and it could be anyone. Okay, so that's what it is. Now, brothers, we're going to take 5 minutes
Okay.
to get up, and then we come back, because I want to be done by 3:30, and that's it. Okay? Because we can cover a lot of this, and it will be covered for the day. So we're going to take a 5-minute break at this time.
Okay.